What happens when a community's entire history is about to be erased? Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of a small town in rural Georgia that answered that question by simply refusing to be forgotten. And in the process, they built something for the whole world.
Let's start with this really powerful quote from Dr. Alvin D. Jackson. It gets at this deep, profound fear, right? That when an elder passes away, a whole library of unwritten stories, of memories, is just lost forever. For one community, that fear became a powerful call to action.
And for Dr. Jackson, this wasn't just some abstract idea. He actually grew up watching his grandparents carefully collect funeral programs and obituaries. And he realized these weren't just pieces of paper. They were like doorways, the missing chapters in the unwritten history of his home, a place called Willow Hill.
So you gotta ask, why was this history unwritten in the first place? Well, this gets us to a fundamental problem that communities like Willow Hill have been up against for centuries.
This old African proverb really hits the nail on the head. It's simple. If a community can't tell its own story, the version that survives is the one told by the hunter. And that narrative often glorifies the powerful and just completely silences the marginalized.
There's actually a term for this, archival silence. It's what happens when the official records, the libraries, the museums, the history books, are just missing the voices and experiences of entire groups of people. For African American communities in the South, this silence has been, deafening.
But the people of Willow Hill, they decided they were going to write their own story. And it all started with a dream that took root in the absolute humblest of beginnings.
I want you to just picture this for a second. It's 1874. The Civil War has been over for less than 10 years. A group of formerly enslaved people who have almost nothing to their name pool what little resources they have. And what's their first priority? Education for their kids. They started a school in an old repurposed work barn, a simple turpentine shanty. And that little shanty, that was just the start. Get this, the school's very first teacher was a 15-year-old girl named Georgiana Riggs. Over the next 125 years, that school just kept evolving. It was sold to the county for just $18. It was later rebuilt as a segregated equalization school, and eventually it was integrated before it finally closed in 1999, a true local landmark. I mean, this visual journey really says it all. To go from a rustic little shanty to a modern brick building, the evolution of this school is just this powerful physical proof of generations of resilience and pure determination. But then, in 1999, that whole 125-year legacy, it faced its biggest threat yet. And that sparked a whole new fight to save not just a building, but the very soul of a community.
So the year is 1999. After 125 years of nonstop operation, the heart of the Willow Hill community, its school, is forced to close its doors for good. And that left a silence that felt pretty final.
And then, in 2005, things get really critical. The county decides to put the historic property up for auction. The actual physical building that held their entire history was about to be sold off to the highest bidder.
But the community wasn't about to let their history be sold. Dr. Alvin Jackson and 11 other descendants of the school's original founders, they jumped into action. The catch? They had just 2 weeks to raise the money and buy back their own legacy.
And you know what? They did it. By pooling their own money, this small group of 12 people bought the school at auction. They gave it a new name and a brand new mission, the Willow Hill Heritage and Renaissance Center.
Okay, so saving the building was huge, but that was just step one. The real mission was to bring the stories themselves back to life, and to do that, they turned to 21st century technology. And this is what that school looks like today. It's so much more than a building now. It's a museum, it's an archive, it's a community hub, all dedicated to preserving and sharing the history that started in that little shanty all those years ago. And the center's most important project? Well, it takes us right back to the very beginning. They're digitizing African-American funeral programs, the exact same kind of documents that Dr. Jackson's grandparents collected, the ones he saw as doorways into his community's past.
So how do they do it? Through this amazing partnership with Georgia Southern University, a whole team of volunteers and interns painstakingly collects these fragile documents, they scan them, they digitize all the information, and then they upload it to a public database, making these local stories accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world.
And the scale of this thing? It is just staggering. So far, they have preserved the life stories from over 2,600 funerals. Think about that.
Each one is a chapter in the history of Willow Hill.
And these stories aren't just sitting there collecting digital dust. Oh no, they've been downloaded more than 16,000 times. By researchers, sure, but more importantly, by families. Families who are finally able to connect with ancestors they thought were lost to time.
And get this, the impact is truly global. We're talking about stories from one small community in rural Georgia being accessed in 134 different countries. That just proves that every story, no matter how local it seems, has universal power.
Remember that fear we started with? The one about a library burning to the ground? By turning their history digital, the people of Willow Hill have built a library that can never, ever be destroyed. They are making sure the lion's story is told loud and clear for generations to come.
The people of Willow Hill saved their own history, and it leaves all of us with a really important question. What stories in your community are waiting to be told, and who's going to be there to make sure they're heard?